Big news. Man, you got to watch the show on Friday because I guess we'll know by then. More Catholic schools are on the chopping block.
The Archdiocese of Philadelphia is expected, as Mike mentioned, to announce more school closings on Fridays.
There was a rumor that we were going to close. However, rumors are rumors. You don't know whether to believe it or not to believe it.
There was definitely rumors attached to each school, like, well, this school is like the first all-girls school, so they're not going to close, and your enrollment's higher than ours.
We'd heard rumors that schools were closing, but we really didn't think that it would be Hubert's. So
I was really sort of hoping and praying that St. Hubert's would, would make the cut, essentially.
I guess we were putting blinders on because we don't want to believe, or we were kidding ourselves that we did not want to believe that it was going to happen to us, but it did.
And I'm sure we'll be talking again.
I hope so.
How come the list hasn't leaked out already?
Oh, I think it will between the meeting on Friday morning and the press conference on Friday afternoon.
We'll know, I bet, by the time our show's over on Friday morning. Okay, thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
6:32.
The other day we knew we were going to have an assembly at the end of the day.
So they brought us into the auditorium and there was no teachers.
And when the teachers walked in, everyone was kind of like looking right at them like, well, she's crying, so something bad's going to happen. And
later we found out that they were telling the teachers. So the teachers found out 5 minutes before us.
When we heard the news, it was kind of shocking. And I didn't go down to the auditorium when they announced the girls because I had that feeling and I just couldn't look at the girls when I went down there.
Some teachers came back in and we all turned around and they were like, they had like tears in their eyes, they were crying, so we were kind of like, what's going on?
our president got on stage, kind of gave us this explanation, like almost compared St. Hubert to someone that like we have all come to know and love, like a relative or something, and like that person has now died, so we're like mourning and it's very sad, and we were all kind of like really confused.
And then they kind of just said that the Archbishop made up his mind and Hubert's was one of the other schools that were closing. We didn't hear any other schools that were closing, but we heard that Hubert's was the one closing.
I'm gonna hug them all.
Now I have the unbelievably painful task of telling you that St. Hubert is going to close.
So that's everyone was just like crying, and that's the pictures where everyone's like really upset on the front steps of the school.
When they came up to see the looks on their faces and looking at me and saying, "What are you going to do?" It was like a feeling of hopelessness at first. Like I never felt so helpless in my life. Like, what can I do? What can I do for these kids? They're asking you to do something that nobody ever trained you to do, that no matter what education course you ever had, you never went through a class on. How do you prevent a school from closing?
I think people were at first filled with shock, like how could it be closing, because it seemed to be such a solid, school.
I could write a dissertation on the unfairness of pitting an all-girls Catholic high school in a blue-collar, working-class neighborhood against, these schools in the suburb where they just don't have the same challenges and history as St. Hubert's.
I don't know whether they picked 4 schools just for the heck of it. I hope that's not what happened. But when you looked at our situation, we were nowhere in the situation that the other 3 schools were. And to tell you the truth, we were better off financially than the other 2 girls' schools.
Certainly looked at fundraising capability, fundraising capacity, but they also looked at sort of financial standing and then enrollment.
I guess just the zoning of it. There was other schools nearby.
Proximity.
Where could we condense kids? Where could they end up going?
So why it was slated to close, I think, a lot of those factors were probably taken into consideration. I just don't think it was transparent or fair.
Some schools had come out and said that they were going to fight the closures. We had not made that decision. We did not know what to do.
At that point, I didn't think anything could be done. So I just, thought it was, a done deal.
I think at the same time, some people were kind of like, oh, well, like, I don't know if there's really anything that they can do.
You know, keep in mind, this was not an independent school. This was not like we could take a vote from the board of directors and decide to keep this school open. This was run by the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, probably the least transparent institution in the world, you know, so there was no clear pathway about how we would even fight this if we wanted to.
Because of the timing and the shock and how quick it happened, there was no plan put into place. And I finally think that we had to convince people downtown that they were making a mistake, that they were closing the wrong school.
So we just put out an open invitation that we would have a meeting in the auditorium, and that meeting was insane. I expected we might get 50 or 75 people, and the auditorium, which seats 950 people, was beyond capacity. I remember going there that night, and I hadn't even prepared anything to say to these folks. We didn't even have a spokesperson. We just announced that night that we were trying to explore our options to figure out what we could do, but one thing was sure, we knew we had to raise money if we were going to put up this fight to save the school. And so we passed around a cardboard box. I think we had, you know, like $10,000 raised. I mean, it was crazy that just from this 1,000 people in the audience that, you know, we were able to raise that much money in an hour. And I remember leaving that meeting that night thinking, you know, I think we could do this.
We contacted everybody and finally got everybody together and had a meeting here at school and then divided everything up into different segments.
We had the weekend to kind of just take it in, and then Monday came around and we really just started to brainstorm, like, what can we do? Like, what are some things we can do to help?
The plan was going to be, we're not taking this. We're going to fight this.
We just concentrated and gave everything we had, left no rock unturned, you know, just gave everything we could do to make sure that if it did close, it was not because we didn't attempt and give everything 100% to keep it open.
On the administration side, like, we had that review board of like adults that got together and kind of reviewed all of the numbers and paperwork end of things. The students, we were like, okay, we didn't know what else to do, so like we take to the front steps of the school.
We had a rally on our front steps, and our front steps are like the symbol of the school.
We would like sing the school song or like do some cheers or something, and then kind of from there it grew like posters.
Then chants started, and the news cameras came, and then teachers were so supportive. They were out there too.
And more and more and more people.
A lot of dads were there supporting their kids, a lot of grade school kids.
Oh, other parishes brought their schools down.
Yeah.
We spent every morning down there in the dark and the cold and the rain.
We would come to school, like stand outside, go to class, be done with school, and then come back. And then we'd do it all again the next day.
People driving by, we would slow down and look and honk, and then they would get excited. And
each girl believed that, you know, what they were doing was part of what was needed to save this building, to save the school.
Other than that, like, there was something like every single weekend.
We're hosting events every night of the week, beef and beers, you know, happy hours, you name it.
It came from 7th graders giving us their money that was in their piggy banks to having a dunk tank.
They sold so many shirts, so many sweatshirts.
To me selling, I sold close to 4,000 t-shirts.
Another alum showed up and offered to make lawn signs, and then everybody wanted a lawn sign. We started selling them.
The kids went around and collected. We stood on corners.
I, myself, and our former president, Sister Alma Rose, we started calling major donors to ask them for big money, you know, $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 gifts.
we learned that we had to show the world why it was important to keep it open. Like, we weren't a dying school, we were a very viable school.
So it was just unbelievable, and the support was amazing. It was amazing.
But nobody had the presence that we had and the constituency that we had built. Everywhere you went, people were talking about this.
I think we started to get a name for ourselves throughout the city because people we didn't even know started to make donations.
You saw an entire community, an entire neighborhood, section of the city that literally rose up to protect its own.
It's really a good feeling to know that the community, not just the Mayfair and Tacony community, but the whole city of Philadelphia, sort of like was behind us.
And even if we weren't able to change the Archdiocese's mind, which seemed absolutely impossible, The message that was so important to send was to these girls that they were worth fighting for.
I think that the backlash
I think they underestimated
that they felt back. They were like, "Whoa, maybe we should
rethink this." Yeah.
The timing of when we started to feel that something good was happening is they were supposed to make an announcement on what schools were going to be saved and what weren't going to be saved, and they postponed it. Now, if they were going to close something, they would have closed it.
There was a group of men from the suburbs who, sort of wealthy, successful developers, had seen what was happening with these schools working to save themselves and decided that they wanted to step in to really make a difference in Catholic education in the future and helping to sustain Catholic secondary education in the city. We had heard that this possibility was out there. But nothing was definitive, and so we knew that there was an announcement coming.
There were so many rumors flying.
And I think like a rumor of a auditorium announcement kind of thing.
There's a special schedule. They're going to be called down to the auditorium to be told one way or the other.
We didn't know if one school was staying open. We didn't know if all were staying open. If they're all just no, we're all closed. So they had in the assembly, it was all of us in the auditorium. We were all sitting with our friends and we were kind of just holding hands. There was news cameras all set up in the front.
We had a big screen in front of the auditorium, and of course, the Archbishop came on.
Now all the schools were watching this, like not just St. Hubert's, not even just the 4 schools that were involved, but like all the archdiocesan high schools.
And the Archbishop came on and was giving this really long announcement. And
just kind of explaining the whole review, the process, which felt really long.
It was very much like,
long
all right,
intro.
well, where's it coming from?
I remember saying, "We have decided."
Yeah,
everyone was on their seat.
And he didn't even get out.
Today, I want to announce that all 4 of these high schools will remain open.
The place just erupted.
Everyone just erupted.
The auditorium exploded.
And that's all we heard.
We didn't hear the rest of I don't know what else he said on the announcement.
It was an unbelievable feeling. Kids were hugging, they were jumping up and down. Everybody was going nuts.
Like people were on the chairs, people were jumping around.
As soon as they said that, everyone said, "We have to go to the steps."
And then it was like a sprint. Out of the auditorium, everybody ran for the front steps.
It was kind of like, let's take it back to where everything started.
The students and the teachers poured out onto the front of the school on Tarsdale Avenue and just celebrated.
There were people driving by honking horns.
And we were just going crazy out there. That's where all the pictures of people were on shoulders.
They were body surfing people.
It was an incredible moment, but to be honest, sort of a new beginning in a lot of ways.
Because it really, you wouldn't think an all-girls school in Northeast Philadelphia would be able to pull that off.
The next week in school, it's almost like somebody gave us a shot of confidence and commitment that we just walked around and you could see it on the kids.
And then after February, we just kind of catapulted, I think, into what really Hubert's is still today and was before. I always used to say it was like our worst nightmare that turned into our dream come true.
I think it made people realize, like, you can't take it for granted, and like when they ask you to fundraise, like, this is why.
It's just a great place to be, and I think not taking that for granted, because we saw how quickly it could be just kind of taken away without even expecting it to happen, really.
I think others can take away from this story the idea that don't let anybody tell you that you're done. Don't let anybody tell you that you're no good, or that you're finished, or what you have is not going to be there any longer. If you believe in it, fight for it.
While the closure announcement of St. Hubert's was probably one of the most devastating times in my life. I think it was one of the best things that ever happened to the school. Sometimes you really have to be confronted with what you might lose before you realize how much you love something and how important something is, and also what the potential for something is. And I think that what happened to St. Hubert's in January of 2012 was probably it saved it in more. We saved the school in more ways than one. That whole experience brought a new level of love and spirit and passion to the school that wouldn't have existed without it, and made the school so much stronger in the end. And so, sometimes you have to have those near-death experiences to really value something. And I think that's what happened. And I think the school is better for it.